So we're here with Peter Boghossian, the author of A Manual for Creating Atheists. Peter, thanks for joining us this evening.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
A little bit about myself. Well, I live in Portland, Oregon. I teach philosophy, atheism, critical thinking, reason, rationality, and values, etc. at Portland State University, full-time faculty. And I'm a speaker in a number of different organizations, Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science, and I've just written a manual for creating atheists.
So I want to get into your book a little bit here because Tom and I spent many hours reading your book, which is a very well-written book, but I want to talk, and I think this will give you a good platform and sort of to jump off from. Could you just explain to our listeners what a street epistemologist is?
Sure. So epistemology is roughly, it's how you know what you know, and a street epistemologist is somebody who helps people clarify how they know what they know. So a street epistemologist is somebody who helps other people, who helps, disabuse people of bad ways of thinking about the world, that is ways of thinking about the world that don't align their beliefs with reality. And they help them to align their beliefs with reality. They help them to give them, just through talking through conversational tools, they help them to engender certain attitudes like a trustfulness of reason and a willingness to reconsider. And they help them embrace reason and shed superstition.
So, one of the things that we've read the book, Cecil and I have read the book.
Hey, by the way, I just want to say thank you for reading the book. I know that sounds insane, but I've had a lot of interviews recently, and without naming any names, some people didn't read the book, and I just found myself incredulous at that. So thank you for reading the book.
I wouldn't dream of having you on the show. I can't imagine what the purpose
I don't know what I'd even say.
Right.
Could you read the book to us? Like, I don't even know.
Have you got about 4.5 hours if you could just sit and read the book to me? That'd be great. It's going to be a short interview in that I'm only going to ask one question, and that is, what does the book say start to finish? So for the benefit of our listeners who have not had the opportunity to read the book yet, so your book, I'm going to do it a terrible injustice, but it's a manual for creating atheists, right? And that's very much what this book focuses to do. It focuses to provide the tools that somebody would need to use the Socratic method, to use conversational techniques to undermine the idea of faith as a good way of knowing. Why is this work important? Why does this matter to you? And is there a target audience for street epistemologists that they should focus on?
All right. So can we back up? So it's not about changing beliefs, but it's about changing the way people form beliefs. So once we get that, then the way we can help people form beliefs that help them align what it is, the ideas and cognitions they have with reality. And that is important, not because of whether or not they believe in God or they have any other particular belief, although of course there are some beliefs that are harmful or dangerous. But it's important that we give people reliable ways to see the world, to differentiate reality from make-believe land. Because as it is right now, people are acting upon things that they think are right or true or just, but they're not. And the consequences of that are not only are they leading bad lives, but in a democracy, it's a horrific cascading consequence of when you value the wrong thing, things that you think are good will happen, but don't happen. So in other words, you could take extreme examples like Saudi Arabia, Iran, or places, but the consequences of in aggregate of people having a way of viewing the world that will not lead them to reality, or that they make worse communities, and everybody ends up suffering.
So you make a distinction in the book about talking about working on people to try to get them to release them from faith, but you're not talking about, you're trying to avoid religion. Why the distinction?
God, I'm just sitting here just beside myself happy that you guys read the book. I can't. I don't even want to talk about the book. I just want to talk about my feeling state of how happy I am that you read the freaking book. So again, I don't know. Thanks for reading the book. I can't say how much that means to me. It makes the whole conversation so much easier. God, let me just bathe in my current feeling state for a moment while I'm being interviewed by people who actually read the book. I'm sorry. What was your question again?
Cecil, this is the one thing we may have done right in our entire podcasting career.
This is the only time a philosophy professor has actually said anything like remotely positive about what I've done. So this is exciting.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, if somebody says, I just had a crazy interview on the Alan Combs show, and
oh no,
yeah, I probably shouldn't have said who it was, but I mean,
that was a redundant sentence. You realize
makes it
that,
unbelievably difficult to have a conversation about something in which the other person doesn't have the faintest clue about the thing in which you're discussing. It's just. It's not even an exercise in frustration. It's much better for me in those interactions, and I'm not answering your question at all, but we'll get back to like talk to someone who's a fundamentalist. I have much better than trying to explain. I can't even now. Now the frustration is going. Okay, give me the question again. I'll answer your question.
The question is the distinction between faith and religion.
Oh yeah. So religion is beset with rituals. And it's beset with there's nothing inherently irrational about going through rituals. The problem is that people use an unreliable epistemology. They use an unreliable way to know the world. That is what empowers religion. That is the support beam, if you will, for why religion is so problematic. The problem isn't that people play bingo or sing songs or what have you. The problem is that people believe that these rituals like the communion wafer, what have you, or the speaking in tongues or whatever, that there's some objective thing in the world that these states correspond to, and then they act upon that. So the way to deal with that is to not deal with it at all. We can just step to the side and deal with faith. Faith is the real problem.
So in your book, you focus a lot on using the Socratic method. So the Socratic method is, as I understand it, the primary tool used in a lot of the conversations that you have with the faithful, and that you suggest that street epistemologists use when discussing issues of faith with the faithful.
Yeah.
Can you explain what the Socratic method is and why you think it's the right tool to discuss faith?
Sure. The Socratic method is the primary tool, and that's in chapter 5. But the other chapters revolve around, so that comes from a very specific set, literature set, philosophy, pedagogy, etc. Pedagogy is like teaching, instruction. But chapter 4 deals with all of the things that surround that. So if one had the Socratic method, but did not have the other tools drawn from diverse bodies of literature in chapter 4, those interventions, helping to disabuse people of faith and live and embrace reason as a value, wouldn't really work. So the Socratic method is part of the solution, but again, and it's the primary tool. It's like the scalpel. But unless you have everything surrounding it, it's really not going to be that effective. So to answer your question directly, Socratic method has 5 stages. I've published extensively about this, what the Socratic method is, how it achieves its ambitions. And basically it starts in wonder, and then somebody has a question, and then there's a very strict template that you can use to just follow line by line, and you don't even really need to have a in-depth knowledge of what you're talking about, the truth claims. You just have to have a knowledge of the validity, like if things follow. And it's a way to guide people through a conversation in which you're asking people if they agree with themselves. That's ultimately what it is.
You say that there's been a few encounters you've had where people have been hostile to you, where you get a range of people when you start this conversation.
Yeah, more than a few, but yeah.
I gotta ask, has anybody, because I'm reading these example, what is it? What do you call that? Dialogue. Thank you. Jeez, I can't even remember my own words here. Words, cool, Cecil. Use your words. Okay. So the example dialogues that are in the book, some of these are pretty. I mean, there's one where you talk about with this guy, and you're having a conversation with him, and you say, would it be okay to murder other people if you heard a voice in your head, just like the Abrahamic tradition? And he says, yes, if I knew it was God. And then you go through this sort of graphic depiction of what it would be like to, say, murder someone, which I thought was brilliant, because it really sort of brings the person back down. Has anybody ever been like physically hostile with you, like because of this sort of shaking of them?
No, no, I was thinking about something Christopher Hitchens said where someone was hostile to him once, but no, nobody has ever. I have quite a few stalkers, and I've been afraid of some people would snap, but in the context of an intervention, no. People have been upset. They've been. I mean, you get the whole range of emotions. I mean, you're really talking about very, very root core central issues, and the reason people get those emotions is because, again, it's because you're basically asking them if they agree with themselves. You don't get that emotion, for example, if I say, how far are you from the door? And you say 8 feet, and I say, well, how do you know you're 8 feet? Or let's see what happened if we measure that out, or what happened. You find out you're 10 feet. You don't go berserk. So there are certain issues that have an emotional valence, like faith issues. And if you use the techniques in chapter 4, then you can disarm that right away. And again, there are some people who suffer from, I don't know, a brain injury or what have you, and that these techniques don't work on. But I've experienced hostility. I've never experienced physical violence. And if I did, I'm not too good of a runner anymore. I just run away.
Just run away. I got to ask though. You say, there's some people that that it's not worth it. Have you ever started talking to somebody and then just been like, this is not going to be worth it?
No, I never said there are people who are not worth it. I said that there are some.
Yeah, like the brain injury.
Yeah, if you have a brain injury, then there's no dialectical intervention will be effective.
But I'm saying, like, is there somebody like, let's say the Westboro Baptist Church lady and you are having a conversation. Would there be a point where you would just give up and just be like, this is not going to work?
I can tell you with total sincerity, with an open heart, from the bottom of my heart, I have never, ever given up hope on a single person.
Wow. Wow.
I am floored.
I don't even know what, like,
because I've given up hope on like nearly everyone at this point.
That's awesome, because there's this idea that atheists are cynical, or atheists are pessimistic by nature. And I think as just the idea that you can have an example in front of you like the lunatic from the Westboro Baptist Church, who may have a traumatic brain injury. It's it's very possible, but that you would not that you would engage her in these conversations and would do so with an open mind, and would do so without giving up, because I would give up hope first. Like I would just hope, and I would have abandoned.
People who have some very, very serious epistemological problems, they've come out of it. I mean, I give a list in my book of about 20 people who were pretty hardcore. And now a lot of those people happen to be good friends of mine. I mean, people have recovered from some pretty serious cognitive illnesses. And again, I'm not mad at somebody. I'm not upset at all. I want to help them. These people, they're not well. They really have some kind of epistemological damage to the wiring of their brain. And we need to help. We need to rewire their brain through conversation. We need to help them. Reason is the tool. It's a tool of emancipation. We can give this to them just by talking to them. So there's no reason to get mad at them or frustrated with them. I mean, if anything, they're trying to be good, decent people, and they think that what they're doing is right.
Oh, sure. I mean, right. Nobody sees themselves as the villain. That's one thing I wanted to talk to you about. And Cecil actually has a great example, I think, here. Is how do you start these conversations? So, for myself personally, I don't get into a lot of casual conversations with a neighbor down the street about faith. We just don't. I think maybe perhaps this is a Midwestern values thing, but people sort of have this idea that religion and politics, at least among people who aren't close, are sort of off limits. And Cecil, you've got people outside your building, right? That
Yeah, I have a group of people that are from the church nearby, and they set up a booth. It's not a booth; it's more like a briefcase with books in it.
Yeah.
But it's like, so they got this thing in it, and the sign outside says, "What does the Bible really say?" And then they have all these free books.
That's
and
great.
So
That'd be a great opportunity.
They want people to do it. So okay, so I'm coming to you for guidance. Give me some guidance on how I could start that conversation. What would you do in that situation?
Here's what I did. And I said this in my my INR 3 talk. Every single conversation you have has to begin with sincerity, has to continue with sincerity, and has to end in sincerity. So don't say things you don't mean. Don't sugarcoat it. Say what you mean. Be blunt. Be forthright. But also be very again, I hate to keep coming back to chapter 4, but don't create adversarial relationships with people. Say what you mean. Be sincere. People might, sorry, I'll add one thing. People are terrified of being sincere because they think that people will hate them. Yeah, I mean, maybe people will dislike you, but I guarantee you, and if you watch my Jesus, the Easter Bunny, and other delusions talk, people will respect you. People respect people who are sincere. They don't respect cowards. Don't be a coward.
I suddenly feel urged to talk to them. Thank you. Either that or I'm guilted into it. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
which.
so you just say, hey, so tell me what you think here. Tell me about this. If you want to learn, say I want to learn. If you don't want to learn, then find something you want to find. You must have some question. All right. I mean,
yeah. Well, the question I want to ask is, why should people care what the Bible really says? That's the question I really want to ask them.
Why don't you ask them?
Well, I get, like you said, it's a rude thing to say.
Well, what would you say? Well, here, you could frame it like this. I'm really trying to understand this. And remember, in the book, I tell you how to frame the statements, and you should frame them as questions. And I go through what words you should use. I'm really interested. Why should one, right? So you put it on yourself, put the onus on yourself. Why would one want to be interested in this? Like, why should this matter? If that's the question you're interested in, ask that question. And then just wait to see what they say and really genuinely listen to what they say. See if you can really understand where they're coming from. You'll find, not 99% of the time, 100% of the time, that it has to fall back on the. I mean, I'm telling you, I do this. There's almost a moment of the day that doesn't go by where I don't think about this, and it always comes back to the same things. I mean, there are only so many things people can tell you.
Yeah. How many chances do you have though? Like with just like Tom was saying, his neighbor. How do you get that conversation started with your neighbor?
You want a beer? Come on over for dinner. How's it going?
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
it just feels...
I mean that, but it's difficult. I think, you say that, and you've obviously been doing this for a long time, and there's a comfort level you have with the process that I think, obviously somebody who hasn't done it before is not going to walk into this with that same comfort level. And there's a certain amount of
wait a second.
social
Okay,
distance
back up.
that we
So,
all.
I mean,
Yeah.
even before you do anything, we're talking about being honest with yourself.
Sure.
You have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be comfortable with being honest. And if you're sincere and if you're honest, people will pick up on that. Don't bullshit anybody.
So in your book, one of the things that you talk about a lot, and this is I think one of the pieces that you come back to quite a bit. You say it's okay not to know.
Absolutely.
What is that about? What's that about?
It's about not pretending to know something you don't know. It's about sincerity. It's about being honest with yourself and being authentic. It's about being honest with what you know and who you are. And there's no room in that to pretend.
So it's a perfectly, like if someone were to say something about evolution, let's say they were to say something, our conversation were to steer to evolution.
Yeah.
And they were to say something that I didn't know about evolution. Yeah. I should just be okay with saying, yeah, but I don't know that.
I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean, but
what kind of
wouldn't you be conceding?
Yeah.
At that point, though, aren't you conceding a point, though? I mean, not saying that you don't know it, but like there, I think that there are some other rhetorical ways in which to soften that blow. It feels like you're almost just giving them a point. The evolution when they say, because then they feel like they've got a.
Wait a second, but did you see how you worded that?
I did. I'm wording it very specifically for your book here.
Yeah, so you worded that like give a point. There are no points. Street epistemology isn't about point. It's not about winning or losing. And that's a key mindset that you have to change. You're not debating people. You're conducting an epistemological intervention. You're intervening in the way people think to help align their beliefs with reality. And one of the techniques, one of the strategies to do that is to model the behavior that you want them to emulate. So if you want them to say, I don't know, when you ask a question about the resurrection or, Muhammad flying to heaven on a winged horse or Thetans trapped in human bodies, whatever it is, the happy hunting grounds, then you need to model that behavior yourself. And when you say, I don't know, don't look down at the floor or the ground. You look someone in the eye and you say, I don't know the answer to that question. It's not a matter of shame that you don't know something.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that part. It makes me feel good because I don't know much about anything. So I felt suddenly empowered by that. I was like, oh, okay, I can say that and more now. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. And I think that if you model the behavior and if you show people that it's okay not to know, again, we're looking at these interactions as interventions. We're not looking at these interactions as debates or arguments or berating someone or belittling someone. We're trying to help people. And the way that you help people is first and foremost to be honest with yourself. So if you're in a conversation and someone asks you a question that you don't know, you say, hey, man, I don't know. But as long as you're honest and sincere about helping people and about finding what's true, and about really listening to what people say, because maybe they know something you don't know. Someone asked me in an interview today, well, what if this produced 1 million Muslims? Like, that's awesome. I think that'd be fantastic. If Muslims formulate their beliefs on the basis of evidence and there's evidence for the Quran, then sign me up. I'm ready to go.
Right. Yeah. And that's so funny because that's something that's lost like every time. It's like, we're not trying to, there's no intent to dissuade somebody from being a Christian. There's no intent to dissuade somebody from being a Muslim. The intent is to dissuade people from using faith as a tool for knowing about their world. That is the intention here. The intention is not to
we're trying to help them realize that faith will not help them align their beliefs with reality. In fact, quite the contrary. But telling people that isn't, they have to come to, you have to help them come to that conclusion themselves.
It's funny because they have to have a coming to God moment about coming away from God.
they have to have, that's what a crisis of faith is. It's someone who's struck by the realization that they've been pretending to know something they don't know.
I actually wanted to read a paragraph from your book toward the end of the book about faith in the academy, because it speaks to something that Cecil and I have talked about a lot on this show, and so I wanted to kind of read it and then give you a chance to kind of chat about it a little bit. Because
sure, everybody loves that chapter. It's yeah, go ahead.
Multiculturalism and associated ideologies grant diverse epistemologies, especially faith processes, immunity from criticism. Multiculturalism buttresses faith-based processes from criticism by conflating race with culture and by making attacks on faith and reasoning processes ethically synonymous with attacks on race, gender, and other immutable characteristics. Rational critiques thus become immoral actions. That paragraph was of particular note to me just because it's a topic Cecil and I have discussed quite a bit on the show. I think you worded it very well in that paragraph. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what you were driving at in that section a little bit?
Yeah, I'm sure my colleagues love that paragraph.
I'm sure they love that whole chapter.
Do you have tenure? Can they kick you out?
No, but I think I'm on my way out anyway, but that's a long story. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to give a genealogy, or I wanted to give an account, because many people who are outside of academia don't realize how completely dysfunctional and inverted the entire system has become. And so I wanted to spell out for people, particularly those who are student activists, so we can try to make some changes in this. And that's one of the things that I talked about in my conversation with Dawkins, how we came to be in this current mess and what we can do about it. So it is the case that there are invasive parasitic values that have latched on to traditional notions of liberals. I'm sounding like an academic. I don't mean to. There are these invasive values, and attacks on attacks on ideas, we have to make a fundamental distinction between an attack of an idea and an attack of a person. And as I've said many times before, ideas don't deserve dignity. People deserve dignity. And so we need to, I think that's the simplest notion in the world, but for whatever reason, my colleagues can't seem to grasp that concept. So, and I certainly don't mean all of them, but epistemological critique, critiquing the way people come to knowledge, especially in the Islamic tradition, is absolutely off the table. But in other faith-based epistemologies as well. So sometimes people conflate the right to hold a belief. Again, it's not about a belief, it's about a way people form belief. But the right to hold a belief, and they look at as a type of, I think I said in the book, epistemological hegemony or colonialism or something, when the professor tries to change those. And that's because that everyone's been indoctrinated by leftist values. Really nasty leftist values too.
Yeah, I found that section particularly interesting because we just got done a couple of weeks ago, engaging an email that we had on the show with somebody who very much was falling into that camp of feeling like, hey, you guys are talking about Islam. You're talking about Islam. Stop. Don't pretend you're not anti-Islam. And there was a total inability to differentiate realistically critiquing Islam as a faith versus critiquing the people. Like, there is no critique of the individual. The individual it's different than the faith. The individual and the faith are not one and the same. And it's I found that this chapter particularly engaging because of that.
We really need to make some changes because the situation is out of control at the moment. Speech codes, diversity boards, any kind of epistemological critique, critique on how people know things. Sometimes people think it's a proxy for race. And as I've said before, outside of the academy, there are some very nasty, bigoted, mean, angry people who legitimately are racist, and they use Islam as a proxy for race. And these people are horrible, hideous human beings, and we need to talk about that, and we need to be honest with it. We also need to make sure that we have the freedom to criticize ideas. Islam is an idea. Christianity is an idea. Faith is an idea. Faith is an epistemology. Again, once people grok that, once people really, truly understand what that means, that's a game changer. So you're talking about criticizing the way people formulate beliefs and come to ideas. And again, in the last part, chapter 8 in the book, I give a template, a literal word-by-word, step-by-step template that you can guide people through to help disabuse them of any kind of epistemological relativism. The problem is that political correctness is so rampant in our institutions right now that even talking about some of these things is problematic.
Peter, if people were going to find your book, where would they look?
Well, hopefully not on some illegal source, which I've told it's one of the most illegally downloaded books right now. I don't know.
What?
Not
That's
sure what to make about that.
You should buy this book, period.
Yeah, I mean, look, so the other thing is we went straight to paperback because it's the book as I'm looking at it right now. It's $9.84. Come on, $9.84. I mean, like, really? Like, so
I've never heard.
It took me a literal lifetime of research and experience, and you're not going to drop $10 on a book to, like, I mean, like, what's up with that? But anyway, they can go to Amazon and they can get it in Kindle or they can get it in paperback. And then once they get it in paperback, when they finish with it, they can lend it to a friend. Or they can leave it in a hotel and in place of the Bible. But keep the book going. Give it to the local library so other people can have it. But it is vital that we take action, immediate action, to eradicate the faith virus. We must stop the spread of the faith virus. I've had enough. You guys have had enough. We've all had enough. Now it's time to do something about it. I'm not saying this is the definitive tool that will lead to the eradication of the faith virus. Certainly hope it is, but at a minimum, if we can get this tool, this book, in the hands of as many people as we can, and again, it's not just about getting the book in the hands of people, but we then need to encourage and motivate people to use the techniques. So your neighbor, get them over there for a beer. The people down the street, the book sale, you need to use these as opportunities.
I gotta say, for $9, that's the cheapest any professor has ever sold his book ever, period.
No
Just so you
I know. Come on. Like, really? Like, we didn't even do a hardcover. I'm thinking, okay, because it's not about the money, right? I mean, I think I only make 50 cents a book or something like that. It's like, I don't know if you know how publishing works, but the publisher takes most of it. So it's not about the money. I'd love to recoup some costs. It's caused a damage to my family, a damage to my health. I haven't done jujitsu. I haven't really watched TV or played games or done any of the fun things. I haven't hung out with my kids. Fighting the faith virus is like a full-time occupation. I mean, it's a night and day job. The other thing is, I am one guy, right? As I said, my best weeks, I only liberate 5 people of the virus. So I need as much help as I can from guys like you, from other people. I need as much help as I possibly can to get the book out, to get it to have people use what's there. It's all there. So I not only need help with that, then we need to devise some system of feedback where people post their interventions on YouTube. Something happens where we can constantly refine these techniques.
That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah,
wow.
Is there an existing forum for that right now? Or?
I think somebody put up both on YouTube and Facebook a thing called Street Epistemology. Okay. And I think he's from England. Leaf is his name. He's been an amazing guy. And other people have put up some other things, but so the book is like the first draft of how to do this. It's a pretty detailed draft, I have to say, but I would love it if some point we aggregated or we really took a look at what worked, and we really sat down and we refined and honed these techniques, and then we got it in the hands of even more people. I mean, that would be fantastic. That would be like a dream come true, right?
It would be really nice, if that gets up and running, to get interviews with people who have been the subject of these interventions. Yeah. To say, hey, we talked and things have changed. We've had 10 conversations since our first one, and your ideas have changed. Can you help map out kind of your process, because that way you can kind of get that feedback from the other end.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I'm going to do is the first time I reveal this right now. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm working with a guy who's evidently doing a documentary on me. But so we're going to do a Kickstarter project, and we're going to go out into the streets, and I'm going to deconvert people on the spot, or I'm going to.
Oh, that's awesome.
You guys read the book. So the trans-theoretical model, I'm going to move them through various stages of behavior change and belief change. So we're going to have a recording, and we're just going to do that, and then we're just going to put that online as YouTube videos.
Yeah, this has been a very good book to read, and we actually read it. So
awesome.
So we want to make sure that people also that are listening to the show buy this book and read it, because it's a great book. Peter, it was wonderful having you on and talking about it. Thank you so much for coming on our show.
It was my absolute pleasure. And if some point in the future you guys want to come back, you get your neighbor, you get the people with the at the stand, you want to come back. And, just take notes. Maybe you can ask them if it's okay that you record the conversation, and we can talk about that, so you can have your neighbor over again or go to the stand or what have you. If you would like to hone and refine your techniques, I think you two guys would be fantastic street epistemologists.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks again for coming on the show.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Thanks.